Tomodachi Life Living the Dream is my favorite game for the Nintendo Switch 2 so far. Sorry Donkey Kong Bonanza, you don't have Poke the Ferris wheel. In all seriousness, I already have a ton of playtime in Living the Dream, and I'm not even close to my limit with the game yet. Not only is creating Miis extremely fun, but so is helping Miis with all their problems. Unless the Mii is sad, get over it, Pomni. I love spending a ton of time bouncing from Mii to Mii and feeding them food, giving them new clothes, or helping them make a new friend. However, as we all know, when looking at the Mii navigation bar, you'll find more than just problems to solve. Every so often, instead of having a problem bubble over their head, the Miis will ask the player if they want to play a game. These mini-games make up a good chunk of the content in Tomodachi Life, and luckily, I find most of them to be pretty fun. There is a wide variety of games you can play, and winning always feels good as you're rewarded with the random prize. No! I knew I should have went the small box. But with so many minigames, some are bound to be worse than others. So today, I thought it'd be fun to rank every Tomodachi Life minigame from the worst to the best. This ranking is based on one simple thing: how much fun I have playing it. The minigame has to have a bit of a challenge to it, along with being fun to come back to repeatedly. Now, Tomodachi Life Living the Dream has a solid 14 minigames, but as I talked about in my last Tomodachi Life video, there were quite a few minigames that didn't make it to Living the Dream. So I thought it'd also be fun to add the 11 exclusive minigames from Tomodachi Collection and the 3DS Tomodachi Life to the list. So that means we have a total of 25 minigames to rank today. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Now for this first minigame, I am unfortunately gonna have to put a bit of an asterisk on it. I highly doubt it actually belongs in last place, but there is literally no way for me to reasonably play this. So our limbo entry for the list is going to 25, the butt writing quiz. This minigame was exclusive to the original DS title, which already poses an issue since that game was also Japan exclusive. Since I have never gotten the chance to play Tomodachi Collection, I've also never gotten a chance to play this minigame either. Even if I was able to play this game though, I would have a pretty difficult time with it. The idea for this minigame is that the Mii will write out a word using their entire body, with very janky animations. Then once the word was spelled out, the player would be given 4 images and they'd have to select which one the Mii spelled out. Since this was a Japan exclusive game, the language the Miis wrote in was also Japanese. I can't read Japanese. So since there's no way to play an English version of this game due to the animations for English letters literally not existing, there's no way for me to properly rank it on this list. I do think it would be fun at least if I could play it, so spiritually it's not in last place, but I don't think I can rank this anywhere else without a real way to play it. Don't worry though, this is the only minigame that's going to be in ranking limbo. 24, football. Or if you live outside of America, it was called one of these names instead. Anyway, this is my actual least favorite minigame from all 3 titles. This was exclusive to Tomodachi Life on the 3DS, which luckily I have played a ton of over the years. The goal of this game was to push your opponent out of the arena by mashing on the touchscreen. Now, I'm already not a huge fan of mashing games. Shut up, I know I main Steven Smash. But the fact that it's a mashing game and a touchscreen game is really what makes it bad for me. I always felt like if I mashed too hard, I would somehow break my screen, so I always held back a bit when playing this game. When I wouldn't hold back, I would probably end up hurting myself somehow because of how fast I was trying to go. Overall, this was just not fun for me, and I'm personally happy it was removed. 23, Mii Shadow Quiz. In this game, you'll be given 3 silhouettes of Miis on your island, and you'll have to guess all 3 correctly in order to win. Now obviously, how difficult this minigame is relies on how different your Mii silhouettes are. Gee, I wonder if that's Minecraft Steve. Yeah, the issue for me is that pretty much all of my Miis are very distinct from their appearance, so this minigame ends up being way too easy. People always say you should be able to recognize a good character design by their silhouette, and since my guys are all based on characters from different franchises I like, they all end up being quite unique. It also doesn't help that the Miis in Living the Dream will even use their pose quirks here, which just makes it even more obvious. 22, cards. This is our first purely luck-based minigame. Essentially, there would be 3 cards between you and the Mii, 2 that match and 1 that doesn't. The goal of this game is to try and get the matching pair by taking a random card from your opponent's hand. You and the Mii keep going back and forth until eventually one of you gets the pair. I do think the concept for this minigame is pretty fun, plus it is also pretty enjoyable seeing the Mii's facial expression whenever something happens. However, like I said, this is purely luck-based. While those types of games are fun on occasion, games that actually challenge the player in some way will always be my favorite. 21, coin spin. Basically the exact same thing with being luck-based. You have to pick either heads or tails. If you choose heads and it lands on heads, you win. But if it lands on tails, you die. The reason I like this more than cards is just because of the coin itself. I love that it has a random Mii's face on it every time you play. It's a really cute touch. 20 look that way. Here we have our second Japan exclusive minigame, but this one doesn't actually need to be in limbo. While I've still never played the original Tomodachi collection, I do have something worse. My brother. Basically for this and the other Japan exclusive minigame, I forced him to pretend to be a Mii so we could play a couple rounds of these games in real life. So essentially, in Look That Way, the player has the option to pick one of 4 directions. At the same time, the Mii will also choose to look into one of those 4 directions as well. If the player is pointing in the same direction as the Mii, then the player wins. The player has 5 tries to point in the same direction as the Mii until they lose. So this is once again another luck-based game, but I like this a tad better than the other 2 since you have more options to pick from. I believe this is the minigame that you have the highest chance of winning of these 3 as well, but the choice aspect is really the main reason I like it. Oh yeah, and I beat my brother every time we played it. Loser! 19 Moving Cups. This is our first rare minigame from Living the Dream, as you can only get this one when a Mii wants to play a game inside of the restaurant. The rarity of the game already makes it a bit more exciting to see than some of the others, but I try not to count that too much for the ranking itself here. During this minigame, the Miis will put on a very fancy outfit. But don't be distracted. This game is all about focus. The Mii will put a coin under one of the 3 cups, and you have to follow which cup has a coin in it. This is a very common type of game, and I usually enjoy it whenever it shows up and stuff. Each round the shuffling gets faster until the 3rd and final round, and while I'm generally able to keep up with it, I can see this being a good challenge for some. I also think it's really funny how the Miis ask you an unrelated question before letting you give the final answer, just as a final way to break your focus a bit. 18 Odd One Out. This is another pretty rare game as it requires 4 Miis to all be friends and want to participate in it. Essentially, you'll be flashed with all 4 Miis doing some random thing, but one of them will be doing something different than the others. You have to choose the odd one out 3 times in order to win. No way, it's Frog Mario! While I do like this game a decent amount, I feel like it is just a little too easy. I haven't struggled at all with it yet since the differences have always been extremely obvious, so I think if they threw in a few harder differences, that could make this a tad more fun. It's definitely also nice that this game is so rare, since I could see it getting a bit tedious due to how long it takes. 17 Red Light Green Light. Squid Game! And we're back to one of the more common mini-games, this time requiring you to reach the Mii without them seeing you. That means you can only move forward when their back is turned, and if you try to move when they can see you... While I do generally find this game to be quite easy, there is one aspect of the game that makes me like it a bit more than I would have otherwise. Every so often, the Mii will actually try to trick the player by fake turning around, and if the player moves when they do this, it's an automatic loss. That makes the player a bit more on edge during the entire thing, and it's kind of funny to see which Miis will try to play dirty since it only happens about 1/5 of the time you get this minigame. 16 Catch. Speaking of playing dirty, this game is all about the Miis rage baiting the player. This didn't make it back into Living the Dream since it takes advantage of the 3DS's dual screens. Essentially, the Mii would drop an item and the player would have to time their catch. The player would get 2 chances to do so before losing the minigame. The part where the Mii's rage bait though comes with the dropping itself. They can delay their drop immediately, or even fake out their drop by having the item attached to a string. That combined with the somewhat strict timing of the catch definitely made this minigame quite frustrating for some players. Personally though, I thought it was pretty funny, and it's cool to have a timing based game since we don't really have many minigames like that. The thing that I'm kind of unsure of about this actually comes from the prizes. Unlike the other minigames where you get to choose a box of 3 different sizes, the prize you get in this game is just the item you're catching. That can make this minigame either feel much lamer or much more stressful depending on what item is being dropped. Personally though, I do think I prefer having the boxes to choose from, but there are definitely advantages to seeing what item is on the line. 15 Headwear Shadow Quiz. And now it's time we begin our big streak of quiz minigames. These make up a majority of the minigames you'll play, and luckily I do enjoy them quite a bit. Obviously Mii Shadow Quiz was a lot lower down, but that's because it was far too easy. Most of these are on a pretty similar difficulty level, so they're all right next to each other. As for this quiz, it was exclusive to the 3DS Tomodachi Life, and I'm honestly really not sure why. For games like Catch or Football, they're both focused on the 3DS's special screens, but this quiz plays exactly like some of the other shadow quizzes that are in Living the Dream. You'll get 3 silhouettes of headwear items, and you'll have to correctly guess each one to win. I feel like I probably would like this a tad more if it was in Living the Dream, but as it is, it's a pretty forgettable version of this game with less possible items than most of the other quizzes. 14. Me Pixel Quiz. Again, another kind of odd removal from the 3DS version, but this one was at least replaced by a different quiz we'll see later on. In a weird way though, since it was exclusive to the 3DS, I think that makes it generally much harder. Like in Me Shadow Quiz, you'll be given 3 Miis, but this time their face will gradually get more and more pixelated. Not only do the pixels obscure the Miis more, but since the 3DS version had less customization options, the Miis were slightly harder to tell apart. Still probably one of the easier quiz types since you do still control the Miis you make, but definitely a bit more difficult than Me Shadow Quiz. 13. Food and Treasure Pixel Quiz. This is the exact same as the Me Pixel Quiz, but this time food and treasure becomes so retro. I think this quiz is significantly harder since the player will obviously not be familiar with every type of food and treasure item. There are hundreds of these in the game, meaning it's basically impossible to memorize how all of them look. I especially like it when you're given a bunch of names for things that you haven't even heard of in real life. Like, what could that mean? I do think of the food and treasure quizzes, this one is a bit easier, but we're definitely starting to get somewhere. One other piece of criticism I do have for these next few quizzes though is their heavy reliance on custom items. I get making them a tad more common to show up, but I think the devs went way too far, as oftentimes 2 out of the 3 choices will be custom item names, so it makes the quiz very easy through process of elimination. I wish they made them show up about 4 times less often. 12. Zoom Quiz. Same concept as our last entry, but instead of pixelating the item, the camera will just zoom in on a random spot. I think this is a smidge trickier since we're often not able to get the full color palette and shape. It's also very funny because sometimes it can zoom into an item in a really bad spot and make it look like there's just nothing there. Some might call that unfair, but I just find it funny, so it gets extra points from me. 11. What's Missing? This one is actually a bit more unique in how it works. First off, I'm pretty sure it can only appear when a Mii is sitting at the table in their home, making it a bit rarer than most of the other quizzes. Like those other ones, you'll have to answer 3 questions. This time though, the Mii will show you 2 items, and you have to quickly pick which of the multiple choice options isn't on the screen. Quickly being the key word here, as the Miis will actually start counting down, and if you don't answer, you'll lose. That adds a nice little bit of stress to this game, especially since the timer gets faster as you go. My only real issue is that I feel like the first 2 rounds are super easy since both items are clear as day. I do like that the last 2 items are covered in shadow though, that definitely makes it a bit more tricky. 10. Double Shadow Quiz and 9. Shadow Quiz. I figure I might as well combine these 2 as my thoughts between them are pretty similar. You'll be shown 3 item silhouettes and you have to try to guess what the item is. I think this is the most difficult of the vision obscuring quizzes, and that mostly comes down to the plates. See, a lot of food items in this game are placed onto plates, which means many of them have very similar silhouettes. So when you put that into a shadow quiz, that can make it extremely difficult to figure out what it is since you barely have anything to go off of. A lot of people think this is unfair, but again, I kinda like it. It really tests your knowledge as you have to try and use process of elimination to determine if the other choices would be on plates or not. A plate food probably comes up about every 3rd time I play, so it makes this pretty intense. As for Double Shadow Quiz, I'm putting it below Normal Shadow Quiz since I think it's actually a bit easier. Since you need to select what 2 objects you're seeing instead of 1 object, you actually have a higher chance of being correct here. It makes process of elimination much easier, so while I do like Double Shadow Quiz as a mix-up, I definitely prefer Normal Shadow. 8. Latte Art Quiz. This is what I believe replaces Me Pixel Quiz in Living the Dream, but pretty much everything about it has improved. First off, the general aesthetics of the quiz are much better since it takes place inside the restaurant. That does make this another one of their rare mini-games, but that also makes me more excited whenever it shows up. Most importantly though, is the fact that they actually made this quiz much harder. You still have to answer 3 questions correctly, but this time the Miis will be swirled in the latte instead of just being pixelated. This makes it so much more difficult to actually see what Mii it is, even if you made your Miis incredibly distinct. These swirls get more intense as you go, which leaves the final round as a pretty tricky test of your eyesight. Maybe some people would have an easier time with this than I do, but I love the challenge this quiz provides. 7. Match. Back to our mini games that are sadly lost media. In this game, you'll get a board of 12 cards and you have to flip over 2 cards at a time to try and make it match. If you get it wrong, you lose one of your 5 lives and have to try again. Essentially, this game acts as a memorization test, as you have to remember what each card you flipped over was in case you find the match. The game ends when all pairs have been found, and I think it was pretty fun to go through. I would love to see this return in Living the Dream. We could always use more memorization games like this. 6. Bowling. Forget what I said about any other game rage baiting the player, this is the worst one. The game acts exactly how you would expect. You'll get a lineup of Miis and you have to knock them all over to win. What's nice about this game is the fact that the position of the Miis and the amount of bowling balls you have will actually change between a few different combinations. That helps keep this minigame feeling fresh, especially since it is on the rarer side compared to some of the other games. What also keeps it engaging is that bit of rage bait I mentioned before. Sometimes, even when you definitely should have knocked over a Mii, they'll refuse. That makes it so you have to be very precise and resourceful with all of your throws. This is definitely one of the hardest minigames between all the Tomodachi titles, but that's what makes it fun to keep coming back to. I've also heard that it is possible to get a strike, and while I haven't been able to do that yet, I have gotten very close. That makes it so there's always a goal to go for in this minigame too, which I think makes it extra fun. 5. Poke the Ferris wheel. This is probably the rarest minigame in Living the Dream, since it can shockingly only happen at the Ferris wheel. The Mii will go inside one of the gondolas, and the player will be given 2 or 3 pokes to help them reach the bottom. The longer you hold the A button for, the harder you poke, so you want to nudge it into just the right spot without over or undershooting it. I really like the skill involved with this minigame, since it's difficult to judge just how hard you're really going to push the wheel. The winning area is also pretty strict, which keeps the game feeling stressful. The fact that this minigame is so rare makes it so it's basically impossible to practice as well, so you really have to play the game to the fullest whenever you get it. The general aesthetic of this game is also really fun too. I love the sounds for the wind up and the poke, along with the Miis dancing in the background. I don't think I'll ever get tired of this game appearing. 4. Versus match. That's Smash Bros. This was an alternate version of the matching minigame I mentioned before, but this time you go directly against a Mii. Instead of having lives, when one of you fails to make a pair, the other person will be allowed to try instead. This goes back and forth until every pair has been found, with the winner being the person who has the most pairs. I think the competitive aspect of this mode makes it much more interesting than the original version we saw before. Now whenever it's not your turn, you have to hope your Mii doesn't get lucky and... At the same time though, this game is also very funny whenever the Mii completely fumbles and forgets where a card was that was already revealed. I would love for this game to be added into Living the Dream in an update, and I think they could definitely expand on it too by having the size of the board be random. As it was though, this was still one of my favorite games on the 3DS. 3. Rock, Paper, Scissors Look That Way. This is the final of the Japan exclusive minigames, and I think it's one of the most intense of the bunch. Like I said, I played this with my brother to get a feel for how it was, and our match lasted for several minutes. I lost, by the way. As the name suggests, this is a more complicated spin on the Look That Way minigame we saw way earlier in the list. Now, at the start of the game, you have to play a round of rock, paper, scissors. Whoever wins that will become the pointer, and they have to try and point in the same direction the other player is going to look. If they don't point in the same way, then the game goes back to the rock, paper, scissors phase. The game ends when a pointer finally points in the same direction the other person is looking, which makes whoever was pointing the winner. Yes, this is also another purely luck-based game, but I think the added length and sense of danger makes this so much more fun. Every time you had to be the looker, it was really scary since you were fighting for your life. Being the pointer, on the other hand, provided a nice safety net, but also made it extra devastating whenever you had to go back to the rock, paper, scissors. I could see some people not enjoying this game due to how long it can take, but I think if this was made to be a rare minigame, I would enjoy it quite a bit. Also, if you're wondering, yes, I asked my brother to play the butt riding quiz too, but he just looked at me funny and walked out. 2. Mii facts. Here we have both our final quiz minigame, and also, sadly, the last game to not make it into Living the Dream. In this game, you would be given 3 statements related to 2 Miis on the island, and you'd have to choose if they're true or false. I absolutely love this quiz for a number of reasons. First off, it being a test of how well you know your Miis fits with the general gameplay of Tomodachi Life extremely well. You're supposed to be building a bond with the guys you create, so having a minigame that tests you on that is a fantastic idea. The other reason I love this is because of how stupid the questions can get. There will be some obvious topics like Mii relationships and birthdays, along with absurd questions like if 2 Miis are hungry or not. I think that's a bit unreasonable. The absurdity of the questions though just adds to how fun this game is. You really don't know what to expect whenever you go in. Despite being in control of the Miis you make, this is still probably one of the hardest quizzes, and I really appreciate that. correct. I tried to find a list of topics that can be brought up during this game, but sadly I didn't see anything on the wiki. I have a few on screen now that I saw from gameplay, but I'm sure there are even more in the game that I just can't remember. The high variety of statements mixed with how absurd they could be is what really made this minigame stand out in my mind. I would absolutely love to see this come back to Living the Dream, easily the game I want to see the most. But there is no Tomodachi Life minigame more intense than playing no repeats with your life on the line.
Aw, fish cakes is a repeat.
As soon as I started making this list, I knew no repeats was easily taking the #1 spot. Every single time one of my Miis requests to play this game, I know it's time for me to lock in. In this game, you and the Mii will have to take turns saying a food item. You have a limited amount of time to pick an item from the list of 3 before being disqualified. If you choose a non-food or a food item that was already said, you'll lose. So the goal of the game is to have one of the Miis repeat one of the previously said food items before you do. And yes, I said one of the Miis. This is a very special minigame as it can be played with more than just one Mii. So far, I think the most Miis I've played with was 4, which I gotta say was extremely intense. Trying to memorize all of the food items that were said while also being under the pressure of a time limit was very stressful, especially since these games can go on for quite a long time. I'm almost convinced that the Miis will get better at this game the more playtime you have, because I often get rounds now where we go back and forth for a very long time. I also love how the music itself builds as the round goes on. It really helps to amp up the intensity of the game. And I gotta say, no other minigame is as satisfying as finally watching a Mii repeat a food and confidently wagging your finger at the screen knowing it's a repeat. This probably isn't the hardest minigame in the Tomodachi Life series, but I'm pretty confident saying that it's been the most fun for me. Pretty much every round is exciting, and I love how the game is open for group matches as well. So for being one of the most satisfying and fun games, No Repeats takes the crown as my favorite minigame in the Tomodachi Life series. But anyways, that's it for this video. Are you a Donkey Kong Bonanza fan who's been angry the entire video since you can technically punch a Ferris wheel in that game? Let me know in the comments. I had a lot of fun putting this list together, and I'm pretty happy that I was able to make a ranking video on Tomodachi Life for you guys. I'm also really happy with how well the last few videos on this game have done, by the way. Thank you all so much for watching them. But before I go, I've got to thank my members being The Shin Smash, Doodle Dog 222, The Cool Man, Lipox14, Megalomari, Danny Gaming Central, She's the Pal, Lorenz 1023, Lucy is Lovely, Foxtrot 4744, Lewis L64, Mr. G 333, The Silent 123, Lilliput 69, Windows Vista's fan-made content, newly rated Geometry Dash levels, Genie VV Yoso, Wyatt Derpy, Leonard Von Hevering, Made02, Starflight, Disco Fama, Cassie Channel, Drop D Mike 75, Virtual Tomato, Extreme 5026, Daniel Castillo 1262, Aaron 0729, Anton 3669, Smuggy, Guy 112, Young Smoky VP7, Zach Pro, Flame 765, Peanut Brown of Gallery, Gorposaurus, BFDI Macron, Stephen Hafner, Night Vision 101, PDX, Wilbur, Mogo Mogo Boat, Stuffy Ant, Rich229, Jehojim, Magnuson Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Nuclear, Blessed Tiger, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Display Changer, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Thicky Reiki, Ingenio TM, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Z Frost Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.